Have you ever wondered why the universe sometimes chooses complete strangers to reveal the truths that the people closest to us never could? Chosen one, today's message begins with a moment so unexpected that your soulmate is still trying to understand whether it was coincidence or divine timing. They weren't searching for you. They weren't thinking about your past together. They were simply living an ordinary day when an unexpected encounter changed everything. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a mysterious sign from the sky. It was a simple conversation with someone who unknowingly spoke about you in a way that completely shattered every assumption your soulmate had been carrying. In that brief exchange, they learned something that no one had ever explained before. They discovered that behind your calm smile, your quiet distance, and your measured words was a person who had been carrying far more emotional weight than anyone realized. For the first time, they understood that your silence had never been coldness. It had been survival. There is an old saying that the strongest mountains never announce the storms they have endured. Looking back now, they are beginning to see that you were like that mountain. While others expected you to explain your pain, defend yourself, or ask for understanding, you chose a different path. You carried your burdens quietly, believing that not every battle needed an audience to prove it was real. That realization struck your soulmate with unexpected force because it contradicted everything they once believed about you. They had mistaken your ability to remain composed for emotional distance. They assumed that because you rarely complained, your heart must have been untouched. But now they see that some people become quieter, not because they feel less, but because they have learned how heavy words can become when no one is truly ready to hear them. Since that unexpected encounter, something inside your soulmate has changed. They keep returning to memories they once overlooked, searching for signs that were always there, but never understood. Every peaceful goodbye, every restrained reaction, every moment you chose understanding instead of conflict suddenly feels different. They are beginning to realize that your greatest struggles were hidden inside the very qualities they once misunderstood. And now one question refuses to leave their heart. If a stranger could recognize the depth you carried so effortlessly, how did they stand so close to you for so long without ever seeing it? Stay with me, because as they begin revisiting the past through this new understanding, they uncover a truth so emotionally overwhelming that it leaves them completely silent, questioning everything they thought they knew about your heart. Chosen one, ever since that unexpected encounter, your soulmate has been carrying a feeling they cannot explain. It is not the kind of emotion that disappears after a few hours or fades with distraction. It follows them into quiet moments, interrupts ordinary days, and returns whenever they least expect it. They keep hearing the same words repeated in their mind, trying to understand how something so simple could completely change the way they see you. The more they reflect, the more they realize that they never truly looked beneath the surface of your calmness. They accepted your strength without ever asking what it had cost you to become that strong. Isn't it remarkable how easily we admire someone's ability to endure while forgetting to wonder what they had to survive in order to become that person? There is an old saying that the deepest oceans appear the calmest from above. Your soulmate finally understands that your heart was like that ocean. While everyone admired the peaceful surface, very few recognized the powerful currents moving silently beneath it. Looking back now, they realize your quiet nature was never proof that life had been easy for you. It was proof that you had learned to carry difficult things with extraordinary grace. As memories begin returning one after another, they notice details that once seemed insignificant. They remember moments when you paused before answering personal questions, not because you were hiding something, but because you had grown accustomed to protecting parts of yourself that few people ever tried to understand. They remember times when you smiled during difficult conversations, choosing peace instead of conflict, even when your own heart needed comfort. At the time, they interpreted those moments as emotional distance. Today, they see something completely different. They see someone who had mastered the difficult art of carrying pain without making it another person's responsibility. Imagine an ancient tree standing alone through countless seasons. People admire its beauty, rest beneath its shade, and praise its strength, yet almost no one thinks about the storms that shaped its roots. Every scar hidden beneath its bark tells a story the leaves never reveal. That is exactly how your soulmate now sees you. They understand that your quiet strength was never created by comfort. It was created by survival, patience, and countless moments where you chose healing instead of bitterness. Perhaps you have wondered why some people become quieter after experiencing deep emotional pain instead of louder. The answer is because genuine suffering often teaches a person that not everyone is prepared to carry another soul's truth. Some wounds are not hidden because of shame. They are protected because they are sacred. Your soulmate is finally beginning to understand that your silence was not built from distrust. It was built from wisdom. You learned that explaining your pain to the wrong people only creates more misunderstanding. So instead of seeking sympathy, you chose inner peace. The strongest hearts are often the gentlest, an old proverb reminds us. Those words suddenly feel alive because they perfectly describe what they now recognize inside you. You never allowed hardship to harden your character. Instead, it softened your compassion. Even while carrying burdens no one else could see, you continued offering kindness to others without expecting them to understand your own struggles. Another realization has begun changing everything inside them. They think about all the times you showed up for other people, even when your own spirit must have been exhausted. They remember how naturally you listened when others needed encouragement. They remember how rarely you complained about your own difficulties. At the time, they assumed you simply had fewer problems than everyone else. Now they understand something entirely different. They realize you had simply become skilled at carrying invisible weight. Imagine watching someone walk across a frozen lake without realizing how carefully they are placing every step. From a distance, it looks effortless. But beneath the surface, every movement requires balance, awareness, and quiet courage. Your soulmate now sees that every smile you shared, every calm response you gave, and every peaceful goodbye you offered carried that same hidden courage. They cannot stop asking themselves how many times they accepted your strength without ever appreciating the cost behind it. The more they reflect, the heavier another truth becomes. They remember moments when they expected you to explain yourself, to defend your choices, or to reveal everything you were feeling. Looking back now, they realize those expectations were unfair because they never created the kind of safety where such honesty could naturally exist. Imagine holding a delicate bird in your hands. It will never sing because someone demands it. It sings only when it feels completely safe. Your heart was much the same. You were never withholding your emotions out of pride. You were simply waiting for a space where they could exist without being judged or misunderstood. That understanding has humbled your soulmate more than they ever expected. They are beginning to recognize that emotional openness is not something people owe each other. It is something that grows where trust is protected with patience and care. Now every memory feels transformed. Ordinary conversations seem extraordinary. Moments they once dismissed now carry hidden meaning. They remember the times your eyes briefly looked away before changing the subject. They remember the gentle way you avoided speaking negatively about people who had hurt you. They remember how you quietly accepted disappointments that would have caused others to react with anger. None of those moments seemed important before. Today, they feel like silent chapters of a story they never bothered to read. The unexpected encounter did not simply reveal something new about you. It taught your soulmate how much had always been visible if only they had looked with greater understanding. And as these realizations continue unfolding, one particular memory refuses to leave their heart, a forgotten moment where your quiet response to deep emotional pain suddenly explains everything they failed to understand about you, becoming the turning point that changes the meaning of your entire connection forever. Chosen one, There are memories that seem completely ordinary until one unexpected truth gives them an entirely new meaning. They sit quietly inside the heart for years, unnoticed, almost forgotten, waiting for the moment when understanding finally catches up with experience. That is exactly what your soulmate is living through now. Ever since that random encounter revealed the hidden weight you had been carrying, one particular memory has refused to leave their mind. At first, it seemed insignificant. It was just another conversation, another ordinary day, another moment that passed without anyone believing it would matter. But now, that single memory feels like the missing piece of a puzzle they have been trying to solve for years. They remember a time when you could have easily spoken about your own pain, defended yourself, or explained everything you were silently carrying. Instead, you smiled gently, changed the conversation, and asked how they were doing. Back then, they interpreted your response as emotional distance, believing you simply didn't want to let anyone get close. Today, they see something completely different. They see a heart that had already learned how to carry its own storms without asking someone else to stand in the rain. There is an old saying that the moon never tells the world how lonely the night can be. Looking back now, they realize your silence was much like that moon. It continued giving light, even while quietly carrying darkness no one else ever noticed. Imagine walking through an old house you've lived in for years. Every room feels familiar because you've passed through it countless times. Then one day, someone points toward a hidden doorway you never realized existed. Suddenly, the entire house feels different, not because the rooms changed, but because your understanding of them did. That forgotten memory has become that hidden doorway for your soulmate. As they step through it, they begin noticing details they completely overlooked before. They remember the way your smile sometimes faded for just a second before returning. They remember how quickly you redirected attention whenever conversations became too personal. They remember how naturally you comforted others while quietly refusing comfort for yourself. None of those moments seemed meaningful at the time. Today, they reveal the emotional life of someone who had become incredibly skilled at protecting everyone else's peace while quietly neglecting their own. The realization strikes deeply because it forces them to admit that they never truly asked what your strength had cost you. They admired the finished masterpiece without ever wondering how many invisible brushstrokes created it. Perhaps you have wondered why people often misunderstand quiet hearts. The answer is because silence is one of the easiest things to misinterpret. Some mistake it for indifference. Others mistake it for pride. But often, silence is simply the language of someone who has been disappointed enough times to understand that not every listener is prepared for the truth. Your soulmate now recognizes that your quiet nature was never a wall built to keep people out. It was a sanctuary built to protect what remained tender inside you. Imagine holding a priceless piece of glass that has already been cracked once before. You don't stop carrying it because you no longer value it. You simply become more careful about whose hands you allow near it. That was your heart. You never stopped loving. You simply learned to love with wisdom instead of recklessness. The deepest roots grow in silence, an old proverb reminds us. Those words now feel profoundly personal because they explain everything your soulmate failed to understand while they still had the chance to ask. Another memory begins surfacing alongside the first. They remember a moment when someone misunderstood you, and instead of defending yourself or proving them wrong, you quietly allowed the misunderstanding to exist. At the time, they couldn't understand why you stayed silent. They believed that if someone truly cared, they would fight harder to be understood. Now they realize that not every battle deserves to be fought. Some hearts become exhausted after spending years explaining themselves to people who had already decided not to listen. Your soulmate finally understands that your silence was not surrender. It was discernment. You had learned that peace sometimes requires walking away from conversations where truth is no longer being sought. Imagine a river flowing around enormous rocks instead of trying to break through them. The river does not choose another path because it is weak. It chooses another path because it understands that its purpose is to keep moving, not to waste its strength fighting obstacles that refuse to move. That image now reminds them of you. Instead of allowing pain to harden your spirit, you quietly kept moving forward, carrying grace into places where resentment would have been easier. Now an even deeper realization begins taking hold. They remember how often you celebrated other people's victories while quietly hiding your own disappointments. They remember how naturally you encouraged others, even during seasons when your own heart must have been searching for encouragement. Looking back, they wonder how they failed to notice such extraordinary emotional strength. They now understand that you were not asking people to rescue you. You were simply hoping someone would notice that even the strongest soul sometimes grows tired. That thought has become almost unbearable because it reminds them how many opportunities they had to truly see you beyond the image you carefully presented to the world. They begin questioning whether your greatest act of courage was not surviving difficult moments, but surviving them without allowing those moments to steal your kindness. As these memories continue unfolding, your soulmate feels something they have not experienced in a very long time. It is not just regret, it is humility. They realize they spent years believing they understood your heart when, in reality, they had only understood the version of you that quietly protected everyone else from your pain. The random encounter did not give them new information about who you are. It simply removed the blindfold that had kept them from seeing what had always been there. And as that blindfold continues falling away, another realization begins emerging with overwhelming clarity. They are no longer haunted by what they failed to hear from you. They are haunted by everything your silence had been trying to say all along. That understanding becomes so emotionally overwhelming that it changes not only the way they remember you, but the way they understand love, strength, and the quiet courage of a heart that kept choosing compassion even when no one truly understood its hidden battles. Chosen one, there are some truths that the heart cannot simply acknowledge and move on from. They settle deep within the soul, changing the way every memory is remembered and every emotion is felt. That is exactly where your soulmate finds themselves now. Ever since that random encounter revealed the hidden struggles you had been carrying, they have not been able to return to the version of the past they once believed. Everything feels different. The streets they once walked without a second thought now remind them of conversations they barely noticed. Songs that once sounded ordinary now seem filled with emotions they failed to recognize when you were standing right in front of them. Even the quiet moments at the end of the day have become impossible to escape because that is when the heart stops running from truth. There is an old saying that the loudest voices disappear with time, but the quietest truths echo forever. Those words have become their reality. They're discovering that your silence left behind echoes far more powerful than any dramatic confession ever could. Every forgotten detail is returning, carrying a meaning they were never emotionally prepared to understand until now. Imagine someone finding an old photograph they have looked at hundreds of times before. For years, they admired the people standing in the front, never noticing the person quietly smiling in the background. Then one day, after learning that person's story, the entire photograph changes. Suddenly the background becomes the first thing they see. The image itself never changed, only their understanding did. That is what has happened to every memory your soulmate has of you. They are no longer focused on the words you spoke or the things you didn't say. Instead, they are noticing the quiet expressions, the gentle pauses, the moments when you chose peace over proving yourself right. They remember how often you listened instead of interrupting, how often you forgave without demanding apologies, and how naturally you carried yourself even during seasons that must have been incredibly difficult. At the time, they admired those qualities without questioning where they came from. Now they realize that every act of patience had a story behind it, every smile had survived a struggle, and every moment of calm had been earned through battles no one else ever witnessed. Perhaps you have wondered why people often recognize someone's hidden pain only after it has already changed them. The answer is because true strength rarely asks to be noticed. It simply continues showing up day after day, carrying burdens without making them someone else's responsibility. Your soulmate finally understands that this was your greatest gift. You never used your wounds to gain sympathy. You never turned your disappointments into reasons to become bitter. Instead, you quietly transformed your pain into compassion. Imagine a candle that continues giving light while slowly melting away. Everyone appreciates the light, but few stop to notice what the candle is sacrificing to keep the room illuminated. That image has become impossible for your soulmate to forget because it reminds them of you. They now understand that every time you encouraged someone else, every time you offered hope, every time you remained patient during difficult moments, you were giving pieces of yourself without asking anyone to recognize the cost. A heart that has suffered deeply often learns to love gently, an old proverb teaches. Those words now explain more about your character than anything they ever believed before. As these realizations continue growing, another emotion quietly takes its place inside their heart. It is guilt, but not the kind that comes from making one obvious mistake. It is the deeper kind that comes from realizing how many opportunities were missed without anyone even knowing it. They think about the moments when you probably needed someone to ask, "Are you really okay?" They remember times when your smile looked just a little more tired than usual, when your eyes carried a sadness that disappeared the moment someone looked too closely. Back then, they assumed you simply preferred being independent. Today, they understand that independence is sometimes the language of people who have become accustomed to carrying life's heaviest burdens alone. Imagine walking beside someone carrying an invisible backpack filled with stones. Because you cannot see the weight, you assume the journey is equally easy for both of you. Then one day, the backpack is placed on your shoulders for just a moment, and suddenly you understand why every step they took required extraordinary strength. That is exactly what this unexpected revelation has done. For the first time, your soulmate feels the emotional weight you had been carrying all along, and it has left them completely humbled. Now, ordinary moments have become emotional reminders. A familiar place brings back the memory of your quiet laughter. A passing conversation reminds them of your thoughtful advice. Even silence itself has become different because they no longer hear emptiness inside it. They hear resilience. They hear sacrifices that never asked for applause. They hear a soul that chose kindness again and again, even when life gave it every reason to become guarded. The more they reflect, the more impossible it becomes to believe the old version of you they once carried in their mind. That version is disappearing, replaced by someone whose emotional strength feels almost sacred. They begin questioning how many people walked past your quiet courage without ever recognizing it. More painfully, they ask themselves how they could have stood so close to your heart and still failed to see what a complete stranger somehow recognized in a single conversation. The universe has a mysterious way of revealing people only when another heart becomes mature enough to truly appreciate them. Some truths are hidden not because they are meant to remain secrets forever, but because understanding requires growth. Your soulmate now realizes that if they had learned this years ago, they might not have fully understood its significance. But today, after experiencing their own disappointments, losses, and moments of loneliness, your quiet strength has become impossible to overlook. They no longer admire you because you appeared strong. They admire you because they finally understand what your strength was protecting. And that realization has become almost too heavy for their heart to carry. They are no longer mourning the misunderstandings of the past. They are mourning the silent battles you fought while they stood beside you without truly seeing them. As this emotional awakening reaches its deepest point, one final truth begins rising above every other realization. They understand that discovering your hidden pain was never the end of their journey. It was the beginning of seeing you as you truly are. The random encounter did not simply reveal a secret about your life. It revealed the extraordinary soul that had been quietly standing behind every smile, every act of patience, and every silent sacrifice. And now they know that once a heart finally recognizes the invisible battles another soul has survived, it can never return to loving that person in the same ordinary way again. Chosen one, some revelations do not arrive to bring immediate peace. They arrive to awaken a heart that has been asleep inside its own assumptions. That is exactly what has happened to your soulmate. The unexpected encounter that seemed so ordinary has become the dividing line between two versions of their life. The version where they believed they understood you, and the version where they finally see you for who you have always been. They are no longer searching for hidden meanings or wondering whether they misunderstood a few conversations. They have accepted something much deeper. They have accepted that they never truly recognized the quiet battles you fought every single day without asking anyone to notice. There is an old saying that only the person who has walked through winter understands the value of another person's fire. Those words now echo inside their heart because they finally realize your warmth. Your patience and your gentle spirit were never signs that life had been easy for you. They were signs that you refused to let hardship change the goodness that lived inside your soul. Looking back, they understand that every smile you offered was a choice. Every act of kindness was a victory over pain. Every calm response was proof that your heart had chosen healing over resentment. That truth has become impossible for them to ignore. Imagine discovering that the strongest bridge in a city was built by someone who carried every stone alone, never asking for recognition and never expecting applause. For years, people crossed that bridge without giving it a second thought. They admired where it took them, but never wondered what it had taken to build it. Then one day, they learn the builder's story, and suddenly every step across that bridge feels different. It carries gratitude instead of familiarity. That is exactly how your soulmate now remembers you. Every memory has gained emotional weight because they finally know what your heart was carrying while creating moments of peace for everyone else. They remember the conversations where you encouraged them even when you probably needed encouragement yourself. They remember the days when you quietly showed up despite carrying emotions that would have overwhelmed many people. They remember your ability to remain respectful when life gave you reasons to become defensive. None of those moments seemed extraordinary before. Today, they realize they were witnessing a rare kind of emotional strength that cannot be taught, only lived. Perhaps you have wondered why the universe sometimes waits so long before allowing someone to truly understand another soul. The answer is because some lessons cannot be explained through words alone. They must be earned through experience. If your soulmate had learned the truth about you years ago, they might have appreciated it for a moment without allowing it to transform them. But now life has humbled them. They have experienced disappointment, loneliness, unanswered questions, and moments when they themselves needed someone to understand the pain they were hiding. Those experiences have prepared their heart to finally recognize yours. Imagine reading the same letter twice, once as a child and again as an adult. The words remain exactly the same, but the meaning becomes completely different because the reader has changed. That is what has happened here. You have not changed. Your story has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the heart that is finally reading your story with wisdom instead of assumption. Time teaches what explanations never could, an old proverb reminds us. Those words now describe every emotion they are carrying. Another realization continues growing inside them with every passing day. They understand that your greatest quality was never your ability to endure pain. It was your refusal to pass that pain on to others. Imagine a gardener who continues planting flowers in a field where no one ever thanks them. Season after season they return, watering the soil, removing weeds, and believing beauty is still worth creating even if no one notices their work. One day people begin admiring the garden, never realizing how much unseen effort made it possible. That gardener is your heart, While others focused on the flowers, they never saw the quiet dedication that existed long before the blossoms appeared. Your soulmate now realizes you spent so much of your life protecting other people's peace, while quietly carrying burdens that were never meant for one person alone. Yet you never allowed those burdens to become excuses for bitterness. Instead, they became the reason your compassion grew even stronger. That understanding has left them emotionally overwhelmed because it reveals a depth of character they had never truly appreciated. Now, every memory has become a teacher. The moments they once rushed through have slowed down inside their mind, revealing details they overlooked for years. They remember the softness in your voice when you spoke about forgiveness. They remember how naturally you celebrated other people's happiness, even during seasons when your own heart was quietly searching for hope. They remember your ability to remain gentle in situations where anger would have been easier. Each memory now whispers the same truth. You were never pretending to be strong. You had simply learned that true strength does not announce itself. It protects, endures, forgives, and continues loving without demanding recognition. That realization has become both beautiful and painful because it forces them to ask themselves how many extraordinary qualities they overlooked simply because they were expecting love to appear in louder, more dramatic ways. As they continue reflecting, they understand that the random encounter was never random at all. It arrived at the exact moment their heart had become ready to receive a truth that would have meant very little in an earlier chapter of their life. The universe often chooses unexpected messengers because pride tends to ignore familiar voices, while remaining open to surprising ones. That simple conversation became the mirror that finally reflected your true character back to them. It did not create a new version of you. It removed every false image that had been standing in front of the real one. And now they find themselves grieving not because you changed, but because they finally understand how much beauty existed inside your soul long before they ever learned to see it. So, chosen one, remember this as your story reaches its final chapter. The greatest revelations are rarely about discovering something new. They are about finally recognizing what has been quietly present all along. Your soulmate can never see you through the eyes of their old misunderstandings again, because those illusions have been replaced by truth. They now see a soul that carried invisible battles with remarkable grace, a heart that protected others without asking to be protected, and a spirit that refused to let suffering erase its kindness. That understanding will remain with them for the rest of their life, because once someone truly recognizes the silent courage hidden behind another person's smile, they never return to seeing that smile as something ordinary again. Some encounters last only a few minutes, yet they awaken truths that transform an entire lifetime. And this unexpected moment has become exactly that, the beginning of seeing your heart as it was always meant to be seen.